James Gunn's DCU Batman, now said to be years away, if it happens. And that if is a big if. So the status of James Gunn's DCU Batman is once again in question, and this time it's said to not be happening for years, if ever. Update. Daniel RPK is stating he didn't say James Gunn won't introduce DCU's Batman until Matt Reeves finishes his trilogy, but hasn't expanded upon what he did say, if anything. So I guess his response was, no, that's not what I said. Yeah. Well, anyway, here's the original article. So, according to Scooper Daniel RPK, The Brave and the Bold isn't coming anytime soon, and it would seem likely. What are the odds that they want two Batman competing with each other? You see, that was always the problem. The obvious thing to do was to build your shared universe out of the Batman. Wasn't a great film. It limped along. People saw it, though. You know. And then the Penguin series. Holy crap, was that so damn good. So then James Gunn comes along with his Superman, and it poops the bed. So, So the idea that, the Batman might not even make it, and we'll need to reboot Batman and get a new Batman anyway. So by the time we get around to the DCU Batman film, this will be all in the past. And no. And the Batman 2 might be a big hit. What if it is? Well, that means you got to do a Batman number 3, maybe even another spinoff series. Penguin 2, something like that. What are you doing? Because you're doing a DC universe, a DC franchise. You know who the big star of DC is? Batman. It's just the way it is. And you gotta orchestrate your things around it, not try to make Batman fit some weird setup here. So anyway, Daniel RPK claims Gunn is pushing to fast-track Matt Reeves' The Batman 3 instead, as he doesn't want two Batmans. Well, yeah, I wouldn't think so. So, unless there was just going to be a streaming Batman, but yeah, they weren't going to do that. Batman's the big kahuna of DC. So, and this applies to the overall movie audience. For DC people, it's Elseworlds Batman, and so it doesn't matter. They're not going to get any of that. That being said, if they would just do a streaming series, that might be actually pretty cool. I mean, I didn't think I was mad that they canceled the Superman TV show, because it was pretty good. And you say, hey, it's different. It's on a different platform and everything. So they theoretically could have done that with Batman, but Batman's their crown jewel, So anyway, didn't want them running at the same time, and wants Matt Reeves' trilogy wrapped so DC Studios can move forward. Well, you can't predict the future. Matt Reeves he wants to do a trilogy, so you get a Batman 3. But look how long it took to get to Batman 2. So who's in charge here? You got to make a decision. And it looks to me like you had no other choice but to accept Matt Reeves' Batman as your Batman. And if he balked at that, well, you know where the door is. You don't own Batman. Warner Brothers does. Anyway, that lines up with ongoing confusion about how the DCU Batman will coexist alongside Reeves' separate universe starring Robert Pattinson. It also lines up with the claims Gunn wanted Pattinson as the DCU Batman. Yeah, because it makes sense. It's just the situation you walked into. Gunn has inherited a lot of stuff, and he hasn't handled it well, but the original status of everything wasn't really his fault. But you got to figure it out. He has it. So, as he would then be able to develop his Batman side-by-side Reeves, Well, that's not happening. Yeah. And I mean, obviously he obviously wants things to be more fantastical and silly, and how he handled Superman and all that sort of stuff. So Reeves' Batman doesn't really fit in with that world. You would have had to try to make things fit in with what's established. And if the Batman becomes the actual first DCU movie, then, there's a lot of templates there. You can say, well, that's how Gotham is and stuff, and how Batman is. And okay, there's wiggle room there. So that Superman, has more of the fantastic and science fiction and all that. But, they didn't. So The Brave and the Bold was originally announced as part of Gunn's DCU Chapter 1 slate. The film is expected to introduce the DCU's Batman and his son Damian Wayne as Robin. However, if Daniel RPK's information is accurate, fans shouldn't expect it anytime soon, if at all. Instead, it's claimed the focus appears to be on finishing Reeves' saga, which began with The Batman. Gunn reportedly wants the trilogy completed before launching a separate DCU Batman, avoiding audience confusion and franchise overlap, which again would take years. Yeah. I mean, it's a credible assumption or speculation on what might happen. And I have a very hard time believing that they'd be okay with two movies competing with one another, They just go, hey, the more Batman, the merrier. So this year or next year, whatever, the Batman 2, I guess it comes out next year. So next year you get the Batman Part 2. So 2028, you get Brave and the Bold, I guess. So, every other year is another Batman movie. Maybe you could have done that. In the meanwhile, the company's being sold, Netflix, Paramount, whichever, all this goes up in the air. You have no idea where it lands. Will they keep any of it? I don't know. Doesn't look like it. But anyway, however, beyond scheduling issues, there are bigger things in play. We've been told that the sale of Warner Bros. Discovery, James Gunn, will be out as head of DC Studios. That explains why Gunn is currently developing the Superman Family Saga projects. Upcoming projects in development only include Man of Tomorrow and the Jimmy Olsen TV series. Who asked for that? Yeah, I don't know what they're doing with that. Meanwhile, everything else appears to be in limbo, including Wonder Woman, dependent on who ultimately takes control of WBD. Lanterns is still moving forward, but it's our understanding it's essentially an HBO series. It's only 8 episodes. Yeah, they'll dump it and move on. That further fuels speculation that Gunn's broader DCU film slate may be stalled until new leadership questions are resolved. There's also internal concern, according to what we've been told, about how Gunn would handle Batman inside the DCU. Batman remains DC's biggest IP. The fear is that the Dark Knight could take on the same quirky, comedic, goofy tone in some of Gunn's previous projects. For many fans and executives alike, Batman isn't a character you turn into a punchline. With The Brave and the Bold meant to feature Damian Wayne, tone will be everything. A misstep with Batman would have major consequences for the entire DCU. Now, Damian Wayne is one of the more hardcore, serious versions of Robin. It's really a disturbing story about how he was raised. Batman, he comes to Batman as he's 10 years old. So they'd probably make him a little lot older than that for the movie. But since he was a child, he was a trained assassin for the League of Shadows. Ra's al Ghul's. He's Ra's al Ghul's grandson. So you got that whole thing. Of the Robins that would be comical, his is the least likely, provided they pay attention to any of that. Since then, it's a father and son story these days, and, it's not bad. But they might put more humor into it. And there's been humor with Damian when it was, they had the Super Sons and stuff like that. And then trying to fit him in with the Teen Titans. They would make oddball jokes about him there. And he'd probably be more willing for that to be put in. And the idea being, if you did have two competing Batmen, then DCU Batman would have more goofy jokes in it, which just would probably do wonders for the Matt Reeves Batman. Well, that's the real Batman. And people thinking that Batmite would show up and stuff like that. The only difference being is that DCU Batman would exist in a more fantastical world with Superman, Green Lantern, and Wonder Woman and all that. So the more fantastical Batman villains could show up. Man-Bat and Mr. Freeze and stuff like that. You can have them in there. Whereas Reeves' Batman is meant to be very grounded as much as possible in the real world. So, but is that enough of a difference to not create a certain amount of confusion between the two Batmen? So we've also been told that if new ownership comes in, they will likely want their own direction for DC. The Netflix CEO just confirmed Gunn's Superman underperformed, which shows they are well aware of what is going on with Gunn and DC. Well, DC is one of the big properties they were using to sell the company on. They said, hey, look what you could have. Well, but Superman didn't do so hot. He couldn't beat Man of Steel. So, So we've also been told the Snyderverse could return depending on who wins the bidding war. If Paramount were to land WBD, that would reportedly mean Gunn is out, as Paramount leadership is viewed as politically aligned differently from Gunn's perceived creative circle. Yeah, but Gunn ain't the only one, so you're still going to run into that. And if you think Zack Snyder is a MAGA guy or something, are you nuts? He's not. So, But it's what metrics do they go by? So Zack Snyder's been posting all these DCEU photographs that he has on his Instagram, along with photos from his other films. But nevertheless, most of them, a lot of them, are his DCEU films, characters, whatever. And the idea is, does this gauge interest in that? So you could say, hey, we should revive this and at least give it a good send-off. Anyway, right now the DCU Batman remains a question mark. It was the plot of the Riddler all along. If The Brave and the Bold is years away and the Batman trilogy gets priority, Gunn's larger DCU plans could stall. If they haven't already, I would say so. Because at least within 2 years, and that's a blink of an eye, there will be new ownership at Warner Brothers. And who the hell knows what they want? If you had this smash hit with Superman, it'd be a different story entirely. And just, keep doing what you're doing, Gunn. That's not the case. And if WBD changes hands, it will. Everything, including Gunn's role, could shift overnight. Right. For now, fans are left waiting to see who ultimately controls DC and what version of Batman in DC survives the corporate shakeup. A lot of things going through this, I think it all comes down to is ultimately they'll want to play it safe. If Matt Reeves' Batman does a hell of a lot better than the first one did, they're just going to default to that. I mean, he'll finish it and all that sort of stuff. And then they'll do another reboot of Batman. They're going to default, go back to Batman movies because they're safer. Marvel, boy, they better hope their new X-Men thing takes off because they can't control Spider-Man. Spider-Man is in the same position Batman is for DC, but for Marvel, it's Spider-Man. But they don't control him like that. So when MCU crashes and burns, which looks to be that it already has, they could just keep doing Spider-Man movies. But they got to share it with Sony. You know? So they're in a worse position. So at least DC's like, look, this isn't working. Scrap it all and concentrate on Batman. And I don't know. Maybe we'll revisit this stuff later. But, you know, Batman's the deal. You know, to play it safe. So more than likely, something of that nature could occur. Now, if there's a lot of excitement and, I don't know, Snyder people can show metrics that Snyderverse is in demand, and they can make a thing of that for a couple of movies. Probably just the 2 Justice League movies. Yeah. But hell, if they do the Justice League 2 and it's a smash hit, then, well, maybe you could do your Affleck Batman movie and your Cavill Superman movie. And that'd be cool. So then you get at least 4 movies. Maybe even Gal Gadot Wonder Woman 3 so that we can forget all about Wonder Woman 84. Yeah? That'd be nice. But you got to bring in the goods. And I don't know. Meanwhile, the oncoming train of AI and God knows what the industry will be like, nobody really knows. It's tough to plan under those circumstances. But it is what it is. But you know who the characters are. There's decades of material to pick from. That aspect of it shouldn't be so hard. And yet, for some reason, that appears to be the case for these movies. Yeah. What is the best DC film universe? Snyderverse, Gunverse, Nolanverse, Keatonverse. Well, Nolan probably wins that one, I think. You know, oh, they're not going to tell me who won. Oh. Well, anyway, my guess is you're not getting Brave and the Bold, and I think DCU ends with Man of Tomorrow. But you never know. Maybe Supergirl's a smash hit. Maybe Clayface steals the summer. And then there's all this buzz and excitement about DCU. And Gunn's like, yeah, I knew it all along. And then Man of Tomorrow becomes highly anticipated. Except it's already been given a short window in the theaters by Warner Brothers already. So, well, best of luck. But the only Batman you're getting is Robert Pattinson for the foreseeable future. And that's that.